come inside this audio and visual wonderland of mine known as the Chronicles from the Upper Deck. I'm your host, Derrick Gow. Welcome back, friends. It's been about a month and a half since I did the podcast in this format, and it's great to be here with you. We have a special guest on our show today, the one, the only Connor Smith is joining us. I've known Connor for about 5 years now, going back to a little mini podcast we did. He went to Ball State University. I went to San Jose State University. I was with the football teams, Ball State versus San Jose State in the Arizona Bowl 2020. And so I decided, hey, I'll invite him onto our podcast. I was hosting with two fellow CFTUD alumni on the show, Max Miller and Ryan Carlson, and we hit it off and been in contact with him since. We've never met in person, by the way, so this is a fun show to do when your friendship continues to grow and grow. So it's an honor to have Connor on our show. He's going to talk about his career and his current stop, which is at Spectrum News One in Kentucky. So it's always fun talking about the journals of business, and also we have some fun sports takes for you. First off, I want to say thank you guys so much for your love, your support of supporting the Birdies and Banter crossover series I'm doing right now with Patrick Abadilla. We've done it for the Players Championship and the Masters. Um, and we decided, hey, we're going to do it for all the men's majors this year. Starting with, of course, with the PGA Championship in a couple weeks, so we'll be back to it. We love your feedback. We love hearing just a show about golf, and that's what we plan on doing. Because when life gives you lemons, you just make lemonade out of it. So it's always an honor to do that for you guys, and we're continuing to grow. So thank you all for your support. We plan on doing, like I said, more of these in the future with Patrick. So it's a lot of fun to do it with one of your brothers, and it's exciting. Work's been going good for the most part. Everything rocking and rolling. We're getting to our tournament season, so I'm excited to, check that out and just experience a full year with my current company, the NCGA. So it's exciting to just be a part of something special and continuing to cover golf, which is something that, like I said, it's my passion. And it's what I love to do. And to be able to create videos and stuff is pretty cool as well. Competitive golf wise, got two golf events coming up, both match play events, NCJ Match Play Challenge, facing one of my colleagues, Ryan. So it should be a lot of fun on the golf course at Poppy Hills. And then in a couple weeks, teaming up with Patrick to play in a four-ball match play challenge. We did it last year. We lost in the first round. We lost 3-2. Very close match. Hopefully we can finally get a win and advance to the next round. So I'm looking forward to that. Getting the competitive juices flowing. I think that's the beautiful thing about golf is that you still have a runway. Your playing career doesn't shorten, it gets wider and you can just take off. So I'm excited to just play a little bit of competitive golf. If you can tell by my shirt, by the way, I went to go see AC/DC, which was a fun time at the Rose Bowl at the granddaddy of them all. I would say this about the Rose Bowl, one of the hardest stadiums to park in just because it's in the middle of a neighborhood. So you have to drive in between Pasadena, down the hill, and the stadium awaits right there. Overall, AC/DC, like I said, I couldn't believe I was going to see them. I actually almost started crying with my family last week. It was just a beautiful concert. Just being in that environment and hearing Hell's Bells, hearing For Those About to Rock. What a beautiful time, it was. And to see Angus Young still kicking ass at 70 years old on the guitar and just shredding it. Um, wow, it just took me back to when I first learned about the band when I think I was 7 or 8 years old, and my dad had the DVD AC/DC Live at Donington, 1992, had the DVD, and he decided to play it. I think he was packed or something. I happened to walk in, and all you hear is just the bell ring. And you just hear a guy in a schoolboy outfit. I'm like, who in the heck is this band? And yeah, AC/DC is just one of my favorite musical acts and bands. It was just good to see him, It was good to see them finally in person. Um, my concert taste, if you will, is like Always go see the legends first. Always go see the legends because you're gonna have time to see Taylor Swift. You're gonna have time to see Billie Eilish. You're gonna have time to see Charlie XCX. Always see the legends first. Always cherish the forefathers of rock and roll because they're not going to be here forever. So it was a fun experience. I would definitely go back to the Rose Bowl probably for a football game, maybe a UCLA football game, but I can't imagine the atmosphere on New Year's Day, parking wise. I mean, it was just chaos trying to get in the stadium. But once you're in there, you feel the history of all those national championship games, Rose Bowl games, World Cup, which will be back there next year. Yeah, and what a beautiful setting that was. I did not see the sunset though in the San Gabriel Mountains because it was closed. It was clouds over, so sorry, Brent Musburger. Um, and Niners off to a good start of the draft. They drafted Mikael Williams from Georgia, uh, lanky defensive end. Really like the pick overall. I think it's going to be a home run defensively. I will see the Niners trying to beef up their O line. I would like to see that because, Trent Williams is getting older, so hopefully they can find a replacement for him. I know the Niners are trying to get a little bit younger, not overspend as much on contracts, except for homegrown guys. So, we'll see what happens with the 49ers. Like I said, they're going defensive overall. Of course, they just drafted defensive lineman Alfred Collins out of Texas, who's a great run stopper. So it should be interesting to see what the Niners do. They're trying to follow the Eagles route and just get faster on the defensive line. And look what the Eagles got. They got them a Super Bowl win over the Chiefs this past February. So I think for the Niners, stay healthy and we'll see what they do. Yeah, we'll see what they do because the division is getting a little more competitive. Obviously, Seahawks are retooling a little bit. No DK Metcalf. Can't say Darnold live up to that big contract. And the Rams, for some reason, the Rams always seem to contribute. I mean, they got Jared Verse leading that defense, and then obviously on offense, you still got Matt Stafford. You got Kyron Williams, you got Puka Nacua, and now Devontae Adams. So I think the Niners, like I said, got to get younger, got to get faster, and I think Robert Saleh is going to try to bring back their identity of getting to the ball, getting to the football, and getting turnovers because that was lacking last year. Was just they weren't forcing any turnovers at all. So let's see what they do there. All right, folks. Lastly, Warriors, of course, series tied at one apiece against the Houston Rockets. Grateful that they made the playoffs. It just was a roller coaster regular season for them. Numerous injuries, just I think identity crisis on both sides of the ball, and then that trade that sent shockwaves around the NBA. The Warriors getting Jimmy Butler, who has made an enormous difference on that team. He's going to be questionable for tomorrow's game against the Rockets, game three. This series totally reminds me of like Kings Warriors a couple years ago when the Kings were this hot and up and coming team and the Warriors were this grizzled veteran team. I feel like this series will go 6 or 7 games. I think the Rockets are a year away. I think to me they just need more of a ball handler, like a playmaker. Um, You know, they have great veteran leadership. Fred Van Vliet, obviously Dylan Brooks can get in your head. Ahmed Thompson, the NorCal native, doing his thing, and you know, Alperen Sengun. I mean, what can you say more about him? The guy, just all he does is rebound. You know what I mean? All he does is rebound. All he does is go to work. And when you square him up with the Oakland native Thompson, that Rocket team's gonna be dangerous. I hope they just don't follow the Kings blueprint, which is when you get one unhappy player, you know, which they had in De'Aaron Fox, the coach changes, the owner gets too involved, you blow it up. I think the Rockets are on the right track, and of course, I think building around Jalen Green, they're going to be a dangerous team. But I do see the Warriors advancing, not just because I'm a fan of them, but I do see them advancing because they got number 30. And when you have Steph Curry on your team, it covers up a lot of holes. It covers up a lot of issues. Um, my hope is to see Jonathan Kuminga step up a little bit. I know he's been sitting out for the past 3 or 4 games, just out of the rotation. Um, so we'll see. I want to see Kuminga just take a step in the right direction. If he wants to be worth that big contract, go chase it. This is your time to shine right here. If Jimmy Butler can't or can play in a limited role or can't play, let's see Kuminga step up. You know, let's see him step up and ascend, like I think the Warriors wanted to see this year. All right, that's enough talking. Coming up next, we got Connor Smith on the other line right here on the Chronicles for the Upper Deck podcast. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Chronicles from the Upper Deck podcast, chapter 33. This gentleman, who's my guest today, let's see, I've known him for 5 years. We did this little podcast together during the pandemic, 2020 college football season. What a wild ride that was. The Arizona Bowl, if for folks that don't remember, it's okay. It wasn't a memorable game for San Jose State. It was for this man's alma mater of Ball State. We did a little podcast, and we've been in touch ever since then. And we've never met in person, by the way, never met in person, and we're still doing it. That just shows the beauty of this magical tool called Zoom University, Zoom State University, as I like to call my college when we were in the pandemic. But hometown, Naperville, Illinois, and he's gone to Ball State, got his journalism degree, went to Northwestern to get his master's degree. A lot more smarter than yours truly, your host here, and then now working for Spectrum News in Kentucky. So it's going to be a fun chat, ladies and gentlemen. Please welcome Connor Smith. Connor, what's up, my brother?
It's great to be with you. It's really exciting time here in Kentucky. We got the Kentucky Derby actually coming up in just over a week. So, that's kind of our Super Bowl, if you will. A lot of international and national attention here. And just it's kind of the calm before the storm, if you will, before that big day, a week from today's Friday. So a week from tomorrow, Saturday.
Yes, sir. The greatest 2 minutes in all sports. And it'll
Yes.
be better international attention than last year at Valhalla when a certain
Oh, yeah.
golfer, we'll get to that. We're gonna save the juicy questions for a little bit later for my man Connor. But Connor, we got icebreaker questions. This is a tradition unlike any other we do on this podcast. 5 questions. We both answer these just to get warmed up. You ready?
I'm ready. Yep.
All right. Your favorite concert?
Ooh, favorite concert. That's a really good question. I think maybe this is recency bias here, but seeing Pearl Jam at Wrigley Field last summer was just unbelievable. Uh, I know they're kind of associated with Seattle, but Eddie Vedder's actually from Evanston, which is actually where Northwestern is, just north of Chicago. So, to kind of have a homecoming, so to speak, was really cool to be there. And Wrigley's obviously just such an iconic venue, too.
Yeah, well, by the way, I'm wearing the AC shirt. Saw them last weekend.
All right.
Yeah, the them all. Um, and yeah, Eddie Vedder, I think has like 3 different allegiances to 3 different cities. We got San Diego.
Hmm.
I think he has some property in Illinois and then Seattle too. So maybe we could create a 3-way series. I think it's the Padres and Mariners are doing some Eddie Vedder Cup later this
Yeah.
year. So yeah, but favorite concert, I've seen them again in June, Metallica. Saw them. What a weekend it was for the books. Graduated 2021, had my grad party Saturday, and then let's just go see Metallica on Sunday at Chase. So phenomenal atmosphere, and can't wait to see him at Levi's. This is a question that will split all Americans up. It's not political at all. Does ketchup and mustard belong on a hot dog?
Mustard, yes. Ketchup, no. I got to stick with the Chicago tradition.
See, I'm opposite. I gotta have ketchup. I don't know if it's just a
Okay.
West thing. I don't know, man. But I know Midwest, it's mustard all the way, and I just gotta take some ketchup packets. Maybe go to Portillo's. You know what I'm saying? All right, your dream vacation spot.
Dream vacation spot. That's a great question. A lot of the big cities in the US I've done at this point, but I haven't really done a whole lot of overseas travel. And I guess that's actually something, not to brag or anything, but this summer, my dad's actually doing some work down under in Australia. So I'm gonna get to go to Sydney for a week. Beautiful city, really long flight. Fun fact, I'm actually going to pass through California, I think, both ways, because as far as I know, there isn't a direct flight from Chicago, but that's tentatively being planned for this summer, and that's going to be a lot of fun.
There we go. Yeah, Australia's on my list. My sister just came back from a wedding down there last month, for a couple weeks ago, actually. Um, Say, yeah, Australia, New Zealand. I would want to go to Macau, China, or Hong Kong. I want to go to my East Asian roots over there just to see and check it out. I think that would be an awesome trip right there. And then Bora Bora too, if we're gonna get tropical. Just have no phones, explore Bora Bora. Not taking ayahuasca like Aaron Rodgers, like his Netflix show, so we won't be doing that. All right. One movie or TV show, past or present, you want to guess appearance on?
Oh man, that's a really good question. Hmm, I don't know. I think I have to think about that one. I'll let you go first.
Oof. Uh, let's see. I think since we're gonna keep it, movie related here, I would say Fast and Furious because I'm just a big Fast and Furious head. They sell me on how many more movies they're gonna make, so I've seen all 10, and I know we're gonna get 11 next year. So Vin Diesel, call me up if you need a stunt driver. We'll flip some cars in LA. Yeah, and I grew up, being a Paul Walker fan, the late great Paul Walker. So I think that would be one. TV show. See, I would say Saved by the Bell, but I wouldn't want to have a talking part because I just want to be in the background at the diner. So I would say those two.
Yeah, and it's funny. I don't really watch a lot of shows, so to speak. For me, it's a lot of the times get home from work, exercise, eat, prepare for the next day, and then just whatever game is on. But grew up watching SNL with my parents. I don't know if I'd have what it takes to like host a whole episode, but just play a cameo here and there, maybe in those weekend updates, so to speak, would be pretty fun, I think.
I like it. Yeah, you see those background actors. I know, just like this is me talking. By the way, this is gonna,
Hmm.
but no dialogue. They're like you just see like Keaton Thompson or Heidi Gardner just
There we go.
laughing my ass off. They were like, so yeah, that's always a good one too. But I would not want to host because I've seen we're big SNL fans, so I've seen just the schedule, just how to keep up with it. It's Monday to Saturday. That's a lot. I think I couldn't do that. All
Hmm.
right, last one. What's a fun fact that people may not know about you?
That's a really good question. Well, like I said, I've done a lot of traveling here in the country, so I'm gonna do a two-part if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I've visited just over, I'd have to fact check this, but I think around 31, 32 of the states. And big sports guy, I've done just under two-thirds of all MLB ballparks. So I was actually thinking of doing Fenway this summer because that's one that I haven't done. But of course, both Chicago's, most of the Midwest, both New York's, Dodger Stadium. Actually, saw San Francisco's years and years ago. Went on a tour there, but big. It's fun to travel and see the different quirks in the summer.
Yeah, I'm going to Fenway actually in September. My Timu
It's great.
Athletics of Sacramento. I'm not saying the only way I'll refer to Oakland is if they move back or we talk about previous players. So Timu Athletics of Sacramento are going to be playing there, so I'm going to go out there. That's the only way I'm going to see A's games, folks. I know I get a lot of questions outside, off air, and off line. Derrick, are you going to go to Sacramento? No, there's no way. I'll be stepping in that stadium. No disrespect to Center Health Park. I've been there. Great minor league stadium. It ain't no major league ballpark. So once again, not going. Never ever, never ever going to a game in Sacramento to see the TBU Athletics in Oakland. All right, so now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of this. Describe your upbringing, Connor. Did you have any siblings growing up, and just how was life in Naperville, Illinois?
Uh, yeah, great community. It's so Chicago, the suburbs are interesting. You have Chicago right by Lake Michigan, and then it kind of just sprawls out. So Naperville is if you if you drive or you take the train or whatever, you head out all the way west and western suburbs of Chicago, there's kind of two big suburbs. There's Aurora and then there's Naperville right here. So was lucky to go to a great high school, Mattia Valley in Aurora. A lot of extracurriculars, kind of something for everyone. I do have a brother. He is a senior at Loyola Chicago, and he's a really great guy. We've done a lot of traveling together as kids. We see each other, especially because I'm based right now in Louisville, Kentucky, but it's a very short commute. So normally I'm up there about once, sometimes twice a month. And Naperville, in particular, is it's a really nice suburb. A lot of people in Chicago tend to make fun of it because there's the whole oh, so where are you from? Well, I'm from Chicago. No, you're not. But no, it's a great town. A lot of great restaurants. There's this really cool downtown area with food and these little cool shops. There's this really long river walk, which is really nice, especially in the summer when the weather's nice and people are out and having a good time. But yeah, really, really lucky. Have a great brother and great family as well.
Nice, man. And has your brother met Sister Jean?
You know what? I think he has actually. I think I'd have to ask him, but very informally at a basketball game, I think. So I'm sure that was a really cool experience for him.
That's one of America's treasures, man. We got to protect her at all costs.
Yes, sir.
Watching her in the Final Four. And I know I think she made like a brief appearance at the NIT because they played San Jose State, and we got.
Yeah.
It was just good to be in the in postseason basketball. Did you play any sports when you were younger and going into high school?
That's a really good question. So, and this kind of goes into how I got into journalism, actually. So, I did play some sports growing up, a little bit of soccer, basketball, ice hockey, tennis, swimming. So essentially a little bit of everything. I wasn't particularly good at any of them, which is sort of how I got into sports journalism. And I'm sure we'll go there in just a little bit. But yeah, I did play some sports, although I can't say I was a star athlete or anything like that.
And what got you into journalism, become the editor of? I'm gonna say, I'm gonna try and pronounce this right, so I don't want any Mattia Valley Mustang fans coming at me. Uh, I just live in Slatus, Mattia Valley High School. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, sir.
Oh. So, what led you to become the editor of their newspaper there?
Well, I always knew that journalism was something that I wanted to get into because, kind of like I was alluding to, uh, just growing up as a kid, really big into writing and reading, and I'm sure that's how a lot of people are, and kind of that creative side. And so there was just I knew of the student newspaper at Mattia Valley as well as the website Mattia Media, and I want to say I spoke really just kind of spoke with my guidance counselor at the time about it, just kind of like, hey, this is something that I'm interested in. I may want to do. Connected me with the advisor, had me send in a sample piece, and it was great experience for what I'm doing now. I mean, it's you start here and then up to college and then up to professional, just kind of like sports and athlete. But yeah, really good way to kind of get that feel for what college would be. And then I realized it was kind of a whole new ball game.
Yeah. And I did look up your high school, by the way. Wikipedia, I don't know if that's the man's best friend or not. Maybe we're in college to try to make those 11:59 p.m. deadlines on Canva or on, for homework. The most famous alumni I found was the kid that voiced Nemo in Finding Dory. I'm not sure if that's accurate.
You know what? That does actually sound kind of familiar.
Okay.
I think I've seen that. I
Okay.
can't, I can't say I know the kid, but that does ring a bell. And
Yeah, I'm
that's
like,
super funny, by the way.
yeah, and I noticed you guys it's a new high school like 2011. It's relatively new, so it's not like a long lineage. So I was looking up famous alumni that went here, and I just saw that. I'm like, okay, I've never seen Finding Dory before, so I
No,
still gotta add that.
actually, 2009 was when it opened, and
Okay.
so 2012, I think, was the first graduating class, and I was 2018. So, uh, yeah, and it's crazy to believe 7 years ago, and it's cliche, but time really does go by.
Yeah, man, enjoy it because I got my 10 year next year, and that's nuts.
Yeah.
What stood out about Ball State University that made you want to go to school there for your undergrad?
So I get this question asked a lot, and I think it was I knew they had a really great journalism program. Just going there for the first time and seeing the Unified Media Lab, which is where the student newspaper is based. There's an arts and journalism building, and there's a food court. And then right above the food court on the second floor is this whole student newsroom. So that's where the student newspaper is, the student TV station, essentially where all the student media groups work out of. And so seeing that was, I thought, really cool. It's a nice campus in that it's big enough to find your footing, but it's not too small. There really is something for everyone, I think. And of course, a great journalism school. And then the other thing was it's in Muncie, Indiana, which is this town that's about an hour northeast-ish of Indianapolis. So about a 4 hour drive from Chicago. And I just thought it was good for me to have that independence and be away from family while also not being like where you are, like in
Yeah.
Sacramento or San Jose, California,
Yeah.
or overseas even. So Midwest, really good vibe, and there were some challenges. I'm not going to lie. Just being away from home and kind of adapting, as I'm sure a lot of people experience, especially in that first year. But really happy, really great 4 years of my life. And it's funny, actually, my graduation was in May of 2022, so we're coming up on 3 years, and I need to go back and visit the campus because I'm sure there's a whole bunch of stuff that's changed since I've been there, but I remember just it being, and even with the pandemic, just really fun, and I'm really fortunate that I got the experience I did.
Yeah, well, I think when you go to a 4 year too, once you walk on, you make that decision, it feels like home for some reason. I'm sure you felt like that at Ball State, where it just felt like a second home. And obviously I struggle too with being homesick, even though I grew up in Salinas, which is an hour south of San Jose, an hour and change. But if you're going
Mhm.
95, you can make it in 55 minutes. Just don't tell CHB. Um, so yeah, I do. Yeah, I think everybody can sympathize with feeling homesick right away. How'd
Mhm.
you overcome that? Was it just trying to just go nosedive into, campus life and, covering the Cardinals athletics program?
100%. Just putting the head down, trying to do well in all my classes, trying to meet people. So, like you said, doing the Ball State Daily News eventually, or, starting as a sports reporter, then kind of making my way up. Um, did some other student activities, had a sports talk radio show there on campus, did some sports podcasts, and just trying to take advantage of the resources and meeting people and really just trying to keep myself busy. That can be as simple as just going for a walk, exercising, or covering a football game. So just trying to keep myself busy and just really take things day by day.
Yeah. And this is where we're gonna pivot to story time with Derek, as we're gonna go off the script here. So 2020, obviously 2020 college football season, weird, random,
Yeah,
bizarre for all college athletics and all sports in that year. San Jose State, obviously greatest year in program history, even though it was like 11, 10 games, we went undefeated regular season. Won the Mountain West, first time in program history. You guys won the MAC title, and then we duke it out in the Arizona Bowl, which, that was a forgettable game. It wasn't even close. I thought it'd be a thriller. And I think I reached out to you, and shout out to Ian Hansen, by the way. Ian Hansen, what's up, my brother? Hope you're doing well. Reached out to you and Ian about going on our little show that we had at our student publication, The Spear, with
yeah,
fellow show alumni and my brothers Max Miller and Ryan Carlson, who are probably going to most likely watch this and remember that they actually met you over Zoom 5 years ago. Um, what
crazy.
were some of your memories covering that team that won the title in the Arizona Bowl, and just what do you remember about being on our show?
Yeah, I just remember how cool it was just being at that first home game. I think it was a Wednesday night in November, and they had limited capacity. They had kind of a student section, but people were spaced out and doing what they needed to do. And you had maybe it was about half full, but I just remember walking into the press box. They do a really nice job with food and getting what you needed, and just thinking, man, this is I don't care what the score is. It's just so cool to be back, especially because I hadn't necessarily had that experience, or I had covered a few football games, and that was my junior year, my freshman and sophomore years, but kind of being on the beat, just thinking how cool it was. Of course, I didn't expect them to have the season they did, but it was just so thrilling being able to travel to Detroit, which is where the MAC championship game was, seeing that win that the way they did against a Buffalo team that you had running back Derrick Patterson, I think, and I just remember hearing about him go off, and I'm like, oh, this is underdog mentality. We'll see what happens, but nonetheless, it's cool to be here. And then what do you know? They win the MAC championship, and I just remember leaving Ford Field, the stadium in Detroit, at like 1 a.m. in the morning, and there was like 50,000 empty seats, and just you could hear a pin drop in there because I had just finished doing the recap for the Daily News, and then of course, as you said, the Arizona Bowl, really thrilling to get to cover, albeit remotely, just, with the pandemic and everything that was going on at the time. But it was really fun to connect with you guys and do that podcast. And I remember just sitting in my bedroom watching the game, writing up my story for the next day. And my colleague, who you had mentioned, he was in Arizona covering the game. And I just remember doing great work, and especially with it being the holidays and being the pandemic, it was really quite a joy to not only be able to cover the team, but also give back to the fans and just give them the coverage that they needed. Because let's face it, Ball State, they're not the biggest sports school by any means. They're not this Big Ten rah rah type of school. They're a MAC school, and they have their fan base, but they're not a huge program. And so to be able to do that coverage and tell the stories of the players, even with the pandemic going on, was just such a fun experience, and certainly something I'll never forget.
Yeah, except for the game result when when our players, I think we had like, I don't know, 9 or 10 players tested positive for COVID, and that was kickoff. Only positive thing is though we got to hear the great Brad Nessler call a San Jose State football game, which we'll ever do again. You mentioned obviously the conference title game, and you could hear a pin drop inside Ford Field, which was loud throughout the last season with the Detroit Lions.
Yeah,
Um, and I had a similar experience too. What I did mainly, student radio broadcasting for San Jose State football, and you just see like this field. You see the field, both teams. You can
Hmm.
hear like anything. But I notice even now that I do still do PA, back to those times, that was like my most listened to broadcasts, like those football broadcasts, because people want to know what's going on. Did you feel that way with like, I know we're not in the business to, obviously generate numbers and views and stuff, but did you feel like, now that you're working at a news station, but going back to your time at Ball State, did you feel like a lot of
Hmm.
people were reading your stuff back in 2020 just because, most of them couldn't get out of the house and go to the stadium?
I think so, yeah. And like I said, it was very rewarding and also very challenging, just given some of the constraints with the pandemic and, covering some games remotely here and there. But I really do think that, it's you take advantage of the situation and just put your best foot forward. And so, yeah, it really was actually. I look back on that year, covering not just football, but covered some men's and women's basketball, some volleyball, especially earlier on. But just being with the sports section and just thinking, yeah, maybe the conditions aren't exactly ideal, but it's a lot of fun to do this work.
Yeah. And then you just feel like an immense sense of gratitude as well, just knowing that you're giving
Hmm.
what you love in this bizarre, I would say just describe it, bizarre time. Now, obviously, was it difficult? You moved on to being an editor at the Ball State Daily News. Was it difficult transitioning from being a staff writer to editor?
No, not necessarily, because I had done some shadowing with the former sports editors who were there, and they were really helpful in showing us the ropes. There are some learning curves, so to speak, but I wouldn't say it was that challenging. And I also had enough time because our sports section at the time was, especially that COVID year, was pretty small. It was myself and my colleague Ian, and then we had maybe two or three reporters. And so, it's not like you're hovering over this entire section. And so, yeah, it allowed me to be able to also go out there and be a reporter and get to go cover games. And yeah, it was great.
And then you graduated, and then you went to get a master's degree. I didn't know this. I had to do my research on your LinkedIn profile, so just don't think I created these questions here willy-nilly here. Did you always wanted to get a master's degree, and what made you want to go to Northwestern?
I mean, I think Northwestern just kind of speaks for itself, especially Medill. You look at that alumni list, and getting a master's degree, it wasn't necessarily a priority, so to speak, but I think education is super valuable. I've always felt, I know there's kind of a debate, and money is a huge concern. So, look, I get that 100%, but parents were very supportive, and I did apply to a couple other programs, but really lucky to have gotten to go to Northwestern. And I think just the idea of, um, you know, being in Chicago, learning from some really great professors, a lot of whom had been in the industry for years, was just something that really stood out to me, as well as getting to cover events like the Super Bowl and, even stuff here locally like the Chicago Marathon, Chicago Bears rookie minicamp. Got to go cover a White Sox game. So being in Chicago, in my home city, that was, I think, just an experience that I couldn't pass up on.
100%. And I always consider, Northwestern, Syracuse, ASU the top, best three, in my opinion, and that want to get into journalism. And I'm not sure about your parents' background, but I know for me, my parents, nobody in my family's ever gone through the journalism route like I've had. And I'm sure your family is probably in that same situation as well. Who are some of your mentors that you looked up to, or you just love reading their stuff? In the Chicago Tribune, or just watching on WGN, NBC Sports, or now it's Marquee Sports Network. There's too many dang sports networks in the Windy City, but who are some of your idols that you looked up to?
That's a really great question. I think just a lot of the beat reporters covering the teams in Chicago. One website that I really like a lot, and I still read to this day, is The Athletic. I think
Yeah.
they do a lot of great work. I know they've had their challenges lately, like a lot of media outlets have, as far as some folks getting laid off, and that's really unfortunate. But yeah, I think their stories always really stood out to me, as well as, like you said, a lot of the sportscasters in Chicago for the different teams. I mean, I don't do play by play. I know you've kind of dabbled in it, but someone like Jason Benetti, who was with the White Sox for many years and now does the Tigers, I think, and has gone on to have a national profile, always really admired him, as well as a lot of the great writers for all the different teams.
Yeah, Jason Benetti's story is inspiration. I know he's doing
Yeah.
Fox Sports now. He was on ESPN. He's a terrific broadcaster.
Hmm.
Jerry, why'd you let him go, man? You let him go to a division rival, and then the Tigers break the playoff drought last year. Come on, man. We'll get more into
Yeah.
make it. We'll get more into what I think about the White Sox and Bulls owner, and then also, of course, the team like Sacramento. But back to being inspirational here. Um, did you have J.A. Adonde as a teacher at Northwestern? And if you did, how was he?
Yeah, and that's a really great question. And he was actually he was actually the program advisor for the sports cohort, and
Got it.
he was really great to be around. I had him for actually the entire time I was there, because I don't think you know this, but my master's thesis in summer of 2023 was kind of centered on the future of sports talk radio, and he was very helpful in helping me come up with a direction for that. And that was a really fun project, but super great guy, super helpful. Of course, he has a lot of experience being at ESPN and now kind of teaching, but always great to be around, and really good mentor and a really good professor too.
Yeah, shout out to the legend Jay and Donde. I watched him on Around the Horn, which is,
Hmm.
first take. You can say what I want. I only watch Stephen A. just go off the rails because it's funny. But Around the Horn and PTI, those are my two shows, man. Those are my two ESPN shows. I know Around the Horn is unfortunately ending, I believe, next month. So yeah, man, I just love Jay and Donde, Woody Page on there. Everybody on there is just phenomenal. So I know the Bears were not at Super Bowl. You covered Super Bowl 57, I believe, right? In February 2023.
That is right. Yes.
Okay. So I know the Bears weren't there. I don't know when they're going to get back there. Like I said, we'll get more into
Oh
that later.
gosh.
Um, what was going through your mind when you covered Super Bowl 57 between the Chiefs and the Eagles? And it should have been the Niners, but that's a different story for a different day. What was going through your mind? You're a student journalist, and you're at arguably one of America's biggest sporting events.
Um, a lot of anxiety, I'm not gonna lie, but the good type. Like, okay, you're here, you were selected to this for a reason, and you wanna, you're representing Medill, Northwestern, and you want to do great work. So definitely a sense of nerve, but also once you get there, that adrenaline sort of kicks in, and just a really phenomenal week, and something that it's funny. It's you leave there and you're like, I want to go back next year, and who knows when that may happen. But that was just such a fun experience, getting to be around some of the players. I covered mainly the Chiefs, so got to speak to, I think it was Chris Jones, Juju Smith-Schuster. He was on the team at that time. Isaiah Pacheco, the running back, and also got to speak to some fans, do some stories around Phoenix, and just really, I think one of, if not the best experiences of my life. I mean, that's just such, not only a sporting event, but a full experience. I mean, it's almost kind of like the Kentucky Derby or any of the other big sporting events. The game's just 3 hours long, but the whole thing goes on for a week, and these types of things take years to prepare for, right? And so just to be there and to think, okay, I've done the work to get here, was just such a super cool feeling for sure.
Yeah, and there's just a certain, even though we're not playing at all, there's a certain adrenaline rush when you cover those big events. Like you just get juiced up. I think just because that's what we all live for and strive for. You already reached it, my man. I'm, this question is something that I'll ask. But did you feel like you got imposter syndrome being there because you just kid from Naperville, Illinois, and now you're covering one of the biggest sporting events as a student journalist? It's just like you had the what the you fill in the blank moment. Am I doing here?
Uh, not really, I think, because you're there with not only having someone like Jay Adonde, who I
Mhm.
think really prepared us well, but also a lot of great other people, not just in my cohort, but some of the other journalists who are there, and I know some of them are doing great things now. So yeah, I can understand that feeling, but for me, I think the mindset was just, okay, I'm here. I'm here for a reason. I'm going to do my best work.
Yeah, awesome, man. That's just awesome. How tough was the job hunt post college for you?
That's a good question. A little tough initially, just because I had gotten some offers here and there, and things a lot of the times don't work out, and but that's totally okay. You just have to keep on looking, searching for a job. I mean, it's kind of a job in and of itself, just because it's like, okay, you get up, what are all the different resources I have, whether it's job boards or people I know. And so a lot of emails, quite a bit of phone calls, quite a bit of perusing, but I was fortunate enough to find a great opportunity here at Spectrum News One Kentucky. May 27th will be my year and a half anniversary. My first day was November 27th of 2023. So the whole process took about a couple of months. Actually, was kind of surprised because I know it's longer for some people and some people it's shorter, but I think right place at the right time. And
Mhm.
it's a great opportunity, and I'm really fortunate to work with great people here.
Yeah, man. And what's your position with Spectrum News One in beautiful Louisville, Kentucky?
So I am a digital news producer, and so what I do is essentially the simplest way to put it is to make sure our website, our app, and our social media platforms look good and are up to date. So anything from editing stories that our reporters turn in, they're out in the field, they're producing their packages, and then they'll send us a web story. So making sure that's good, making sure people can see their work. A lot of news in the day. We get a lot of press releases. So right now, a lot of the focus has been Derby, and there's a lot of Derby events going on, like parades and festivals and what have you. So making sure stuff like that is up, getting stuff on our social media platforms. That was a big point of emphasis for us last year, because and I think with digital, that's kind of where people are going right now. I mean, you may have a TV, but you may not have cable anymore. You may have Roku or whatever. And I think being able to meet people where they are is really important. And like I said, it's a great opportunity, and fortunate to do a lot of great work and work with really good people.
And I know you're in a bigger media market than I was here in my hometown. Did the same work that I did here for our local CBS, Telemundo, and Fox affiliate. For you get to join all these Facebook crime groups too, like I did, just because people want to know the cheese mate, the drama. They love to know the drama, what's going on at their house. Um, Was it difficult for you to, I know you covered mainly sports, during your undergrad. Was it difficult to transition to news full time, or was it a little bit easier since you had that experience, at Northwestern and Ball State?
I wouldn't say it was that difficult, just because, as you alluded to, I had that experience from both my alma maters. And anytime that you start a new position or you're entering the field for the first time, there are always some learning curves, but you kind of adapt and get better at those over time. and I had done some more newsier stuff in my alma mater, so that kind of helped set me up, especially at Ball State and Northwestern too. To be honest with you, that prepared me for some of the new stuff. But we actually do a lot of sports coverage. We don't have a sports cast or like sports reporter, so to speak, but we have a sports section on our website. Of course, we don't have any of the big pro teams here, but you have Louisville Cardinals, Kentucky Wildcats, football and basketball are both huge here, as well as stuff like the Derby, and then it kind of trickles down to we have two soccer teams, NWSL, as well as the USL, which is kind of below the MLS, minor league baseball. So it, despite the lack of like an NFL team or an NHL team or an NBA team, it still really is a great sports city. Nowhere near as big as Chicago, but it's got its charm to it for sure.
Kentucky basketball, man, that's a way of life down there. I'm
Yeah.
telling you, that's a way of life. That's the first question you get asked, how the Wildcats do it off the plane. And I need to go to Rep Arena with you when I visit you, my brother. Um, so since we're gonna, talk about a little bit about your career, obviously, too. Obviously, we had the PGA Championship there last year. And I think you know where I'm going with this question, but I'm just going to continue to go on. Obviously, Xander Schauffele made that heroic, I mean, clutch putt on the 72nd hole to beat outlast Victor Hovland and Bryson. But that wasn't the talk, unfortunately. It was on that Friday morning with a certain world number one, two-time Masters champion, Olympic gold medalist, Scotty Scheffler. I was off that day. I was still working for our CBS affiliate down here, KION.
Mhm.
And I shot my work phone, okay, turned it on, and it said, Scotty Scheffler arrested. And I'm like, this is a joke, because I was barely waking up. It was just a joke. My brother, you were right there. It was in your city at Valhalla Country Club. Just tell me about. I'm not sure if you were working that day, and like I said, you guys were the epicenter of one of sports' most bizarre, weird. Unfortunately, sadly, it ended in a tragedy. One person did lose their life over that, but
Yeah.
um, just one of the most bizarre stories, I think, in the past, I don't know, decade. Because golf, usually you don't involve police and a golfer. Um, just describe your thought process of what was going on that Friday morning and just that bizarre day for Scotty Scheffler.
Yeah, so I'm gonna kind of backtrack here. I was actually off that day too.
Okay.
So I just remember, and but I do remember exactly where I was when I saw that news. So very similar experience to you actually. Friday morning, kind of sleeping in a little bit, and I just remember turning on my phone and seeing the alert and my jaw dropping and just thinking, what the heck is going on? So really just one of, even though I personally wasn't there and like I said, I wasn't working that day, just a really bizarre series of events and just something that, if I'm going to be honest, did kind of overshadow the moment of the PGA Championship that weekend, but very very similar to you for sure in that I just can't believe what's going on right now.
I've never seen ESPN go wall-to-wall coverage like it was CNN over a golf. Now, of course, when Tiger won the Masters, 2019, they did that. Rory, completely career grand slam a couple weeks ago, they did that. But they went wall to wall, no commercials. They had the chopper up, like, following him to the golf course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if ESPN, I know they're going to make a 30 for 30. They might need to interview you or interview one of your colleagues at
Hmm.
Spectrum News One, because that was
Hmm.
just some, like I said, one of the most bizarre stories. And I do agree, kind of overshadowed. That's what it's going to be known for. And I know the PGA is going to go back there, and I'm sure there's going to be, where were
For
you when
sure.
this happened? So,
Hmm.
yeah, it was just, I needed to ask that because, like I said, you were there, my brother. But another big sport event, and you've been talking about it, the Kentucky Derby, the greatest 2 minutes in all sports. Um, what is that experience like covering that event? Because I know, like I said, that's your guys' bread and butter. Big sporting
Yeah.
is the Kentucky Derby.
Very similar to. what I've mentioned with the Super Bowl and even going back to Ball State. It's a lot of work because that is our big event. It's like all eyes are on us for that day, but very rewarding. And you know, the adrenaline just kind of kicks in. And I think getting that experience last year, because that was my first year and I was a rookie, so to speak. So a little bit of nervousness and anxiety, but I got to go out to the track early that week, kind of get the lay of the land. We were broadcasting, and we still are this year from the backside, so kind of near where all the stables are. And I think that really prepared me for race day, whether it's getting stuff up on social media. We have a live blog going. That's something that we do sometimes with breaking news stories when there's just all this information coming at you. That's something that's really helpful for us. And yeah, it was an experience that, just like the Super Bowl, kind of anxious heading into it, but you're there on that day, and it's just kind of boots on the ground, do the work, and then once you're done, it's just feels so rewarding at the end. And I'm sure it's going to be the same this year too.
Yeah, my mom got to go to a corporate outing there because they had a conference in
Mhm.
Louisville. I want to say like 3 years ago or 2 years ago. How big is Churchill Downs actually in person when you're there?
It's so I think the best way to put it is it's like when you compare it with L&N Stadium, which is where the Louisville Cardinals play. It's like you could fit in like four football stadiums, but it's kind of funny because when I was there, I don't. It's big, obviously, but I remember thinking like this isn't that big, you know. So it's I know that's kind of a weird way to put it, but no, I mean the track's pretty cool. And even being there earlier in the week when they do some of the races beforehand, because it's not just the Kentucky Derby. You have the Derby and then the Oaks before, and then essentially a whole week of racing. Actually, tomorrow is opening night, so there's several races and the post position draw, which is I think shortly after 7 Eastern my time. So it's kind of this big, you know, thing leading up to it, and then the
Yeah.
Derby's just like the climax, and like you said, most exciting 2 minutes in sports.
Yeah. And I know you guys are taking on all angles from the safety aspect, obviously.
Hmm.
Fashion too. I mean, the fashion's just, insane.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You do like a whole 30-minute show on that. Obviously, the actual sport itself. There's always going to be protesters, of course, with horse racing. That's just what that sport is there. Um, so yeah, that's something on my list. I think I would do once. I'm not sure if I would dress up to the nines, but I think you have to because you're there. Have you
Yep.
had a mid julep there?
I have not, but
Okay.
I have to. I know it's the big drink here,
Yeah.
and nothing like Kentucky bourbon.
Yeah, plenty of that there, man. And maybe
Yep,
just, once you're off the clock, we don't drink on
for
there.
sure, for
Yeah,
sure.
this is
Yep.
water, folks, by the way. This is water. It's not anything of adult beverage nature. What are some of your future goals in journalism?
That's a great question. Just because I mean, this job was something that I didn't necessarily expect in terms of just trying to keep my mind open. And I know that's kind of cliche to say, but I like even when I was in Northwestern, like I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. Like, do I want to look solely at sports? Do I want to go to news? You know, maybe do a little bit of both. So I'm really lucky to be where I am with Spectrum News One. Like I said, I work at a really great team. And as far as the future, I think it's just kind of wait and see. And I know that's a boring answer, but being here in Louisville, it's been a really good opportunity for me. And there's great days, there's some harder days, but just really lucky to have grown and, like I said, fortunate to be where I am.
Yeah. And it sounds like it's kind of basically your kind of dream start to your career. Um,
Yeah.
and then, right people around you, right place around
hmm
you. Yeah, that's awesome, man. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, I guess people say it all the time, but don't be afraid to ask for help and don't be afraid to ask questions. That's something that, especially early on, I kind of struggled with just because I'm a very independent person in that regard. But if something's not right, just know that, hey, ask for help. What's going on? How do I do this? If they don't know the answer, someone else will. And if that person doesn't know, someone else will. And, that's just, I think going into the workforce, that was one of my biggest learning curves or challenges, and even in school too. But yeah, don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be, and make connections too. I think having mentors is really important just because you never know where life is going to take you, and to have people that you can seek out to for advice and help and, hey, this looks really cool. I don't know if I want to do it. Just having those people by your side, and surrounding yourself with a great support system is really important.
Facts, man. And speaking of Louisville, I got a Louisville Slugger, not on a
All
four-wheeler,
right.
like I think this is Tony Gwynn's, the late great Tony Gwynn's bat. I don't know how I
Okay.
got it. I have to ask this. I know it's the stupidest tourist question. You probably get this on phone calls. Have you been to the Louisville Slugger Museum?
Yes, I have. And funny story, I've been there a couple times. So in 2014, my family and I took a road trip from Chicago down to Disney World. And
Um,
so we spent some time in Orlando, did the theme park, and then drove back and actually stopped in Louisville, I think just to get lunch. But I remember going into the Slugger Museum and thinking it was cool. And that was one of the first things that I did when I moved here was uh, go in and walk around and take the tour. They do a really great job.
how long was that drive, man, to Disney World?
Well, let's see. So we did Chicago, and don't quote me on this, Chicago to Atlanta. The first day stayed kind of on the outskirts of Atlanta. So, you have the downtown, and then like Chicago kind of sprawls out. And so that was, I want to say, just over 10 hours, maybe a little longer. And then to Orlando, maybe about 5, 6 hours. And then we did the exact same thing on the way back too. So uh, yeah, actually, and I just remember being in the car with the family, my dad rocking some U2 and Bruce Springsteen, and my brother being passed out, and a lot of gas stops, a lot of McDonald's and Subway and Chick-fil-A. But those road trips with the family never get old.
Holy moly. Yeah, it's like the Griswolds, National Lampoon's Vacation,
Yeah.
except no Aunt Edna on the top of the roof of the car. God dang, man, 15 hours. I know a lot of because I've been to Disney World like 5 or 6 times. I'm not rich,
Mhm.
folks. We're just very fortunate, so don't quote me on that either. I know a lot of families on the East Coast, that's a rite of passage. They just
Yep.
drive down. I'm just like, yeah, that's crazy, man. So we got one social media question for you. For one of my boys here. I at iFlowers831 Isaac, who you're chasing in my pick'em contest. That's why you're on the show. Besides that, you're an awesome
All
journalist.
right.
So shout out to iFlowers on Instagram. What are your thoughts on the Chicago Bulls?
Oh man, I feel like I am gonna try not to go down a rabbit hole here. They're just mired in mediocrity right now, I think is the best way to put it. They're a team, and granted, I'm not the biggest NBA guy by any means, but it just feels like since Derrick Rose left the team, it's 2016, I think, so almost
Yeah.
a decade ago. I know Butler has come in. You kind of had that youth movement a few seasons ago, but it they need to blow it up and just rebuild from scratch. And I know that's easier said than done. A lot of the times, the tanking can turn out to be a complete disaster. But what good are you going to get, going 38, 44, 39, 43, play in game for, I think, the third straight year, and then you lose? It's just this false sense of hope and optimism, and they just need to, I think, blow it all up, in my opinion. And I know that doesn't always work, but you're not going to accomplish anything by just being stuck in the middle. I think no matter whether it's the NBA, NFL, NHL, MLB, and pro sports especially, you're just not going to accomplish anything. And I think starting from scratch and rebuilding from up, a lot of, very similar to what the Hawks did a few years ago, trading away Patrick Kane and Jonathan Taves leaving and getting Connor Bedard, and they're still kind of on the struggle bus right now too.
Yeah.
But like I said, I just think that sitting in the middle isn't going to accomplish anything, and it's just the worst place to be for any sports team, I think.
Yeah, I think there's a stat they haven't won a playoff game. I think it's like Derrick Rose's like third year there or fourth
Yeah.
year. Lord have mercy. It's a sad house on Madison there. I'm sure that's not the first time anybody said that. Um, speaking of the speaking of the owner of the Chicago Bulls, he also owns the Chicago White Sox as one Jerry
Yes.
Reinsdorf, one of the most powerful players I think in Major League Baseball and also in pro sports. I see the crowds at I'm gonna call it U.S. Cellular Field because that's what I grew up watching with the 2005 team: Jermaine Dye, Bobby Jakes,
Hmm.
Scott Posednik. It's not guaranteed rate field. It's U.S. Cellular Field, but the crowds are small. I'm not gonna lie. I thought, what happened, man? I don't know. Which owner will sell their baseball team first? Will that be Jerry Reinsdorf, or will that be ours, the worst owner in professional sports right now, John Fisher?
Well, I mean, the A situation probably better than I do, but I think with Reinsdorf, it's really interesting because there was actually a report last year saying, because he's getting up there. I want to
Yeah.
say late 80s,
Mhm.
that he'd be open to selling the team. And I think I forget where it was, just a few weeks ago, him coming out and saying, "Nope, I'm going to keep the team until I die." So yeah, it's a tough situation down there. It's actually called rate field now. So it was guaranteed rate field, and now it's just, I guess, because nothing is guaranteed, right? When you're there at 35th and Shields. But yeah, it's a sad situation down there, and they broke the modern all-time loss record last season, and they won 41 games. They may win 45, 46, 47 games this year. So it's like,
Oh,
you talk about where the Bulls are, the Sox are they're at the far bottom of the totem pole, man. It's just, I don't know. Baseball, it's not to go off on a tangent here, but it's just interesting compared to other sports, because you have the White Sox and the A's and the Rockies even. Um, you know, I I don't know about the Pirates, but them having Paul Skeens, and it's just they can't fill out the rest of their roster. It's like, you what is with all these teams that just, you know they're going to lose 100, 110 games, and
yeah,
it's just an unfortunate situation,
yeah.
with the Sox, and hopefully better days ahead. But yeah, that's the ownership, I think, in Chicago. It's an issue, and nothing but respect for Jerry Reinsdorf, doing, with the Bulls, and then, like you alluded to, 2005. But I think if we're going to be brutally honest here, the game's passed him by 100%.
Yeah. And 2005, we're praying for Bobby Jenks, who I know is
Yeah,
battling cancer. So prayers up to Bobby Jenks and his family. Yeah, man, it's interesting. 2020 ALDS, it was, or the Wild Card Series, White Sox A's, a lot of young
yeah.
talent, Yohan Moncada, and then Luis Robert Jr., who's like the last man standing there. Garrett Crochet was still there. And then like three-quarters of both our teams are gone, man. I don't know what's going on. How'd you become a White Sox fan, by the way? I'm just curious, over the Cubs.
So I'm actually going to backtrack there. So
Okay.
I'm a Chicago fan.
Okay.
I cheer for both teams, and
Yeah.
so I hate to admit this, but the Cubs are much better right now. And I still watch Sox games when I can, but they've commanded, I would say, most of my attention this season. And I know that sounds like, oh, you're just a fair weather fan, but I mean, you think about it, it's like being, in my opinion, there being a Cubs and a White Sox fan, that's a whole lot worse than, or I'm sorry, a whole lot better than being like a Cubs and a Cardinals fan or a White Sox and a Twins fan, because those teams play each other, I think, what, 4 to 6 times a season, one series at both parks. And at
Yeah.
the end of the day, it's still your city, different neighborhoods. And there's people who are like, oh, you got to pick a side, north side, south side. No, screw all of that. I cheer for both teams, and I will until I die. But yeah, just it's super cool being in Chicago every day from April 1st until September 30th on average any given year. There's a baseball game, and so
Yeah.
just remember going to games, keeping score, and that's something that I still do. You walk into Wrigley Field and you see the ivy, go down to the south side. You know, you have the fireworks going off, and that stadium, I know they've had their issues and they will for a long time, but when the team's good, they draw out. And so I went to game 3 of the 2021 ALDS
Oh,
against the Astros. I was home for fall break, and that place was just the loudest, and it was right after COVID too. So
yeah.
to be there with everyone coming together, they lost that series 3-1, but that was the one game that they did win.
Yeah.
And I just remember it probably won't be that way for another 8 to 10 years at this point, but yeah, it's unfortunate in Chicago because it really is, I think, a really great sports city.
Yeah.
But the way the teams are, and granted, the Cubs have had a hot start. I know the Hawks suck right now, but they do have a superstar in Connor Bedard and a really good prospect pool, uh, kind of similar to where the Bears are as well, building around Caleb Williams. I'm curious to see what they do in the draft tonight, but there is hope, but I have to be very cautious optimism, I think, because sometimes these rebuilds work and then it can slap you right in the face. And then
Yeah.
you have a White Sox situation where they were very unique because from 2019 until about 21, 22, you saw what was coming together and it got excited, and it's like, man, I thought they were maybe going to get to a World Series. Who knew they'd peak with Tim Anderson in the Field of Dreams game, and then that would be the highlight of the rebuild, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah,
No
that was
108-year curse broke.
yeah, that was one of the best baseball games I've seen on TV. And I got a soft spot for the Giants, I'm not gonna lie, but it's so much easier to make fun of your friends that are Giants fans. It's just
Yeah,
it's like a rat in the trap. You just feed them some cheese and then they just come back and then they're like, "Well, we got three world championships in my lifetime." I'm like, but of course the green and gold have died. I don't know if I don't know if they'll get Ted wherever they are. Kalinga, Sacramento, Vegas, Oakland, who knows? Just a couple more questions for you, Connor, before we wrap it up
okay.
here. Thoughts on the Bears drafting Colton Loveland? I was a little surprised to be honest because I thought they would go O-line. Because I was at the Bears Niners game last year. They were chasing Caleb
Oh
Williams out of the
gosh,
stadium. Your
don't
thoughts
remind
on
me.
them drafting the Michigan tight end?
I think it's exciting, especially because, like you said, I was a little surprised too, but they did address that in the offseason, bringing in Joe Tooney from the Chiefs as well as trading for Jonah Jackson from the LA Rams. So I think it's an intriguing pick for sure. When it came to tight ends, the big ones on the board were really him as well as Tyler Warren from Penn State. And Warren was a little more highly regarded, it seems, but it's interesting. Maybe not necessarily just because that O line is still kind of an area of I don't want to say concern because they did address it, but something that with Caleb they have to do what they can to protect him. But
Yeah.
bringing in Ben Johnson as head coach from the Lions, you see what he did with a guy like Sam Laporta over there in Detroit, and so I know it's again a lot of cautious optimism, but and a lot of how I felt last season, and then they just kind of slid on their face. But I think the difference heading into this season, even though it's months away, is having Ben Johnson as head coach, someone who you saw what he did with the Lions versus a Matt Eberflus who was you knew that he wasn't going to be the ideally like if they're ever going to get to the top of the North, he wasn't going to be the guy. We kind of knew he was a lame duck, and sure enough, that's exactly what happened. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm intrigued for sure. Like I said, a lot of cautious optimism.
Yeah, and it all went in smoke last year in Landover, Maryland. We all know how that went.
Oh
All you
gosh.
gotta do is bat down the football, man. All you had to do is bat down the football. But that's here they say. By the way, what a prey. Obviously the Bears lost franchise legend Steve McDaniel,
Yes,
Mongo,
Steve McMichael.
Steve McMichael. Excuse me. I'm sorry, Steve McMichael.
Yeah.
Finally got in the Hall of Fame last year. He should have gone in a long time ago. But yeah, ALS, man. You know. Need more awareness for that. Hopefully, we can find a cure in our lifetime, my brother. Um, which Chicago team will return to championship glory? The Cubs, the White Sox, the Bulls, the Blackhawks, the Bears, the Fire, the Chicago Sky, or the Chicago Stars?
I'm gonna go the easy answer and go with the Cubs. You're kind of tempted to say the Hawks or maybe the Bears, but I really like what the Cubs did this offseason, bringing in Kyle Tucker, because that was kind of that star power guy was what they were missing and what had kind of held them back, that MVP caliber talent. But I think at this point, I know it's only April, but in my opinion, the division is kind of theirs to lose. The NL Central isn't really the greatest, and
Yeah.
they also do have a pretty good prospect system as well. Actually, it's funny. I'm actually going to a game tomorrow here in Louisville. The Bats, who are the AAA affiliate of the Reds, they're taking on the Iowa Cubs. So I'm really excited to get to see some of the future players there with the organization. But I think that's probably the easiest answer right now would be the Cubs. But I do like what the Blackhawks are doing. I know it's kind of the Connor Bedard show there at the United Center, but they kind of underwent a youth movement, trading away guys like Seth Jones and Craig Smith, Peter Mrazek, kind of these older players
Yeah.
to get a guy like Spencer Knight, goaltender from the Panthers, and he's kind of given them new life as well as a lot of the other players in that pool too. So see how it all comes together. But there is hope, and I know that can only take you so far. But it's not like 2 3 years ago where dumpster fire. The what are we doing here? So again, exciting time right now, despite where the teams may be in the standings.
Yeah, and Seiya Suzuki we made him look like Hank Aaron in Sacramento, man. It was just a little league park and we were just throwing it down the middle and he hit like, I don't know, 2 home runs, 3 home runs in that series. Jeez Louise. Ball State football, I know they got a new head coach. How do you think they'll do this year?
They were kind of on the struggle bus, I think, but I'm going to be curious to see because what they do because Mike New was in that position for a very long time, and not only the success of winning in the COVID season and getting to the Arizona Bowl, but I just remember him being a great guy to be around. So I wish him luck, but I'm excited to kind of see this revamp program and always look forward to some action in the fall.
Wednesday nights, baby, my favorite time of the
All
year.
right.
The action right there, Central Michigan. I think we're playing them this year. Ball
Okay.
State, yeah. Yeah, one thing about the back too, it's always a revolving door of like teams that win the conference. It's never like the same team, like you see in the
Exactly.
SEC. So that's what I love about it. Will we see Macklin Celebrini or Connor Bedard get back to the playoffs first?
Ooh, I I know I'm well actually I know I'm gonna sound biased here, but I'm gonna go the Hawks. I just have to, right?
Yeah,
Although I do think that see it's interesting because the Sharks, I know you all have Celebrini and
yeah,
Will Smith, and
yeah,
what the Hawks are doing is it's kind of a little different because a lot of the young players right now are the defensemen. So it's kind of like you figure out the defensemen and the goaltending and then kind of the forwards. I think they probably need to get a forward in this year's draft because they had number two overall last year. Ended up taking Artem Levshinov, Belarusian defenseman. He got in a handful of games toward the end of the season, but no, it's an interesting situation, and I think they're on very similar tracks, and I can't wait for that 2029 Western Conference Final,
I
2010
remember.
rematch,
I
19 years
remember,
later.
yeah, I remember you messaged me down on Instagram, and I'm like, it might happen 2026. The thing is, too, it's just the Sharks defense, man. I just we've had like I don't know how many 3 goal games, like 3 goal
Yeah.
leads, excuse me, and then we just blow it because I don't know what we're doing on defense. But I think both teams are on the right track. But Gary Bettman, call me up. We were gonna get a Winter Classic here, man. You give it to Bedard, and that was just a blowout city. When you call us up, man, we got a
See,
couple
I
opinions.
was I remember it, and it was a great game, but I remember when I saw the announcement, I'm like, okay, I think a lot of what they want to do is showcase Bedard, this young star. I mean, Chicago, win or lose, is a great sports town, but yeah, I mean, I think maybe in retrospect, you want to wait until 2028 when more of the prospects are ideally
Exactly.
at full speed. But no, I'd love to see. I know you guys had a Stadium Series game at Levi's in 2015, I think,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
you know, Hawks Sharks at Oracle Park. Let's go, man.
yeah. I think no, they're gonna go with the easy route. Just give us the Golden Knights because to me that's our biggest
Yeah.
rival. They surpassed the Ducks, the Canes. That's our biggest rival. I think that will be for quite a while until Vegas decides to go with the rebuild. Hopefully, please. Um, what should the audience learn about your story?
Ooh, that's a great question.
That's always my last
Um,
question of this, so take it away.
yeah, I think just be open and know that you may have goals, but you may not necessarily meet those goals, and that's okay. And for example, maybe you're like, I want to be a sports reporter, or conversely, I want to be a news reporter for the field that I'm in. Hey, maybe I want to do TV, and then you end up behind the scenes, or vice versa. And for me, I didn't necessarily, like I said, I didn't expect to be where I am in Louisville, but it's turned out to be a great opportunity. So a lot of the times, the goals, especially if maybe you're listening to this and you're younger, or even if you've lived a long life, or you're someone like me, uh, where you are right now and what you want to be, say, maybe 5, 10 years down the road, that may not turn out to be the case, and that's okay. And life is really a series of twists and turns because, like I said, uh, this was not something digital news producer in Louisville, Kentucky, that was on my radar 5 years ago. But like I said, it's turned out to be a great opportunity, and sometimes it works that way. Other times it doesn't, and that's okay too. It's okay to fail. It's okay to have your setbacks, whether that's personal, professional, whatever the case may be. But you just gotta learn from those and just keep moving forward because life is precious and valuable.
Amen, my brother. Said it perfectly. Connor Smith, ladies and gentlemen, right there. Connor, what's your social media so that people can follow your work at Spectrum News One?
Absolutely. You can follow me at Connor Nicholas 19 on Instagram.
There you go on the IG machine, Connor.
Yes,
Continue the
sir.
good work, man, with journalism, my brother. I know we worked in the same position, and you gave me a lot of good
Yeah.
advice, vice versa. So appreciate you coming on today, my brother. And we will meet in person eventually. You're more than welcome to come to the Bay Area, and I'll come to
All right.
Louisville, Chicago, Naperville, wherever you want me. We'll go to go recreate Wayne's World in Aurora or something like that.
Okay.
Connor Smith, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back on the Chronicles from the Upper Deck podcast. Welcome back to the Chronicles from the Upper Deck podcast. Again, I'm your host, Derrick. It was great having Connor Smith in the chair. Go check out his work, of course, covering all things Louisville news and sports on Spectrum News 1 in Kentucky. That guy is one of the best journalist that I know, and I know he's going to go and chase his dreams down, and he's just enjoy the moment, continuing to grow in his role. That sometimes that's all you need to do is just continuing to grow in his role. Lost a couple people over the weekend. Of course, like I mentioned earlier, Steve McMichael passing away, the Hall of Famer um, of ALS, and ALS is just such a ruthless disease. Um, just a ruthless disease, as we know, Niner fans know about Dwight Clark's battle with ALS. So I just hope that we find a cure in our lifetime. And like I said, I'm glad that he got into the Hall of Fame and most of his teammates were there. So it was really special to see that for him and his family. So Mongo, rest in peace. And like I said, one of the most underappreciated defensive players, I think, of his time. Of course, major part of that defense that helped the Bears win the Super Bowl back in 1985. Yeah, just a tragic loss for not only the city of Chicago, um, but for football and for his family. And we also lost the Pope. Pope Francis passed away on Easter Monday. I usually don't really talk about religion too much publicly because I think we live in a age now where it just gets so ridiculed on what you believe and who you believe and what happens. Listen, I'm Catholic through and through. Um, I don't necessarily agree with everything the church says. I know that's kind of maybe a controversial statement, but what Pope Francis did was to include, I think, my generation to come back to the church or to get involved in the church, um, recognizing the blessing of same-sex couples, um, fighting climate change everywhere. I think he was just the Pope of the people, and realistically, he was one of those leaders that led with grace and class and always saw the positive light in things, I think, which we need to do more of. Um, and we need to just start doing, especially in this divisive political climate that we have here in the United States, and maybe you do, wherever you're listening to or watching this from around the world. Um, so yeah, it's a sad day. I truly hope that when they go into the conclave, once Pope Francis's services, his funeral is concluded, I truly hope they continue to go in the direction of modernizing the Catholic Church, and continue trying to bring in more young people to serve our Lord, and I hope that happens um, for the better because I think the more young people you have in the Catholic Church in terms of serving and whether that's being readers or even trying to get more women to help out in the Catholic Church as well. I would hope that you go in the right direction as well. And lastly, I want to end on this. How special was the Grand Slam, the glory for Rory McIlroy, finally completing the career Grand Slam. I know I talked about it a little bit on the recent Birdies of Banter episode I did with Patrick, but for some reason you just get emotional for those moments. Those moments where you climb up Mount Everest. And Rory, like I said with that wedge shot on 13, I think we thought, oh no, here we go. We've seen this movie before at Augusta, where he comes close and then there's heartbreak. But I just thought he was in a different mental stratosphere than anybody. He just looked so calm, didn't let his emotions get out of check. I think that's a credit to him working with Dr. Bob Rotella, the mental sports coach that he has. Um, it made a difference. It truly made a difference. And Rory has a green jacket, has a chance to win the PGA in a few weeks at Quail Hollow in Charlotte, where he's won there 4 times. Obviously, the U.S. Open at Oakmont will be a fascinating test for him. And then, of course, July, back at Royal Portrush, back in Northern Ireland, back to where he has the course record there. I know it didn't go his way in 2019 when he missed the cut. But how special it would be for Rory to win a second claret jug there in front of his family, his friends, in front of his home country. That would be a magical moment that might outshine what he did at Augusta National. And this golf season's kicking off. Got the Chevron Championship, the first LPGA Major of the year going down in Houston over the weekend. So it's a great time to be a sports fan. Hockey playoffs, NBA playoffs going on, baseball kicking off. Of course, Giants right now looking good in the NL West. The A's are still hanging around no matter what city they play in. They still got a young nuclear core, and I'll give them that. All right, my friends, that's it. That's all. You've heard me talk long enough. I'm sure you guys are making your summer plans already. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Please continue to spread the love. Please continue to be kind to one another. And again, thank you for joining and watching the Chronicles from the Upper Deck podcast. You can now leave this audio and visual wonderland of mine. And if we don't come back before Mother's Day, please wish all your mothers and your grandmothers and any female mentors that you have in your life a happy Mother's Day. Um, and just give them the love that they need because they do a lot for us, believe it or not, gentlemen. They do a lot for us. All right. Peace and love, everybody.